A violent weekend sees 3 Baltimore teens shot and 1 killed. New tonight, we asked the mayor if he's satisfied with how state leaders are addressing the crisis. An alarming number of students chronically absent from school. We pressed council members on their latest attempt to hold school leaders accountable and children in class. A new report claims the FBI's investigation into Donald Trump and Russia should have never happened. The critical mistakes it says they made. A former high-ranking employee is suing Baltimore County schools. The accusations against top officials.
How's that going to affect the morale of the staff?
And how this could impact the search for the next superintendent. Governor Wes Moore set to sign a new bill limiting where you can legally carry a gun.
It's an illegal bill.
Why some lawmakers call it unconstitutional.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson. Baltimore City has lost more than 100 lives to violence this year. Many of those killed are teenagers. An 18-year-old was killed last night. 2 other teens were hurt in shootings, including a 14-year-old girl. And tonight, Fox 45 News is bringing the juvenile crime concerns directly to city leaders, including Mayor Brandon Scott. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor is questioning city council members about the root cause of juvenile violence, and council members are calling for a hearing on absenteeism in city schools. Our live team coverage begins with Keith Daniels. Keith questioned the mayor. So, Keith, what's the mayor saying?
Well, Kai, we caught up with the mayor at a recreation center where he said he spent a lot of time as a youth in Park Heights, and tonight he's talking about the youth and what he says he's doing to help keep them safe. At the James D. Gross Recreation Center in Park Heights, Mayor Brandon Scott with a sledgehammer and the first blow. The mayor and other city leaders breaking the wall, announcing the rollout of renovations at several of the city's rec centers. News of the improvements for the city's youth, a help to Scott's crime reduction plan involving juveniles. But word of the renovations comes after a violent weekend involving juveniles, with 3 teens shot, 1 killed. The mayor pressed tonight on the disturbing trend of gun violence involving youth and what can be done about it, including expecting tougher legislation from lawmakers in Annapolis, along with the city's delegation.
You do not see me complaining. What we want to do is how do we make that partnership that is very strong even stronger?
Still, this year's General Assembly ends with no legislation specifically targeted at gun violence involving youth. From the podium to outside the rec center, we pushed the mayor on that point. Well, Mr. Mayor, I mean, how satisfied are you with legislators? Did they do enough?
Am I completely satisfied? No, because we didn't get everything we wanted. But does that dismay me? No. We go back, we work with our partners in partnership. This one thing I won't do is call people out.
So far this year, there have been 10 juvenile homicides. Another 34 young people have been shot and survived. During a crime stat hearing inside City Hall last week, Baltimore Police Deputy Commissioner Richard Worley acknowledging the teen gun crisis.
Unfortunately, a lot of young people are ending up with guns in their hands.
Frustration over gun violence and its cost to youth as city and state leaders struggle to gain control.
I don't point blame at anyone else first. I look at what I can be doing and how I can be better, and working with them in partnership is what we're going to do.
Well, that legislation that the mayor said he wanted but did not get from lawmakers in Annapolis this session deals primarily with home monitoring in the state of Maryland. The mayor wants what he calls immediate automatic notification and action in place when a juvenile is in violation of their home monitoring orders. He said he'll pick that legislation and push for that legislation again next session. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think there should be a special legislative session in Annapolis to tackle juvenile crime? So far, 93% of voters say yes. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote and click on the Pulse tab to weigh in. Governor Wes Moore is signing hundreds of bills into law, but none of them deal with the juvenile crime crisis. Tomorrow, he'll sign Senate Bill 1, which seeks to limit where legal concealed carry weapon permit holders can bring their firearms. On Fox 45 News at 4 o'clock, we spoke with the head of community activist group Peace, who says the governor should be focusing more on criminals than legal gun owners.
He campaigned on basically Baltimore and, to confuse what's going on around the state and not address the real issue, which is illegal guns pouring into Baltimore City and being used on the streets of Baltimore. It is completely dishonest to not separate what's actually happening and address the root cause of the problem, which we're seeing these illegal guns in Baltimore City, and instead put it back to legal gun owners. Let's at least focus on the real problem so that we can create real solutions.
Many Republicans also say Senate Bill 1 is unconstitutional. We'll take a closer look at those concerns and what legal battles could come after the. When it comes to juvenile crime, many point to struggling Baltimore City public schools as a driving force. A number of teenagers involved in violence during the school day include the 17-year-old police officer shot last week. Well, now the city council members want to question school leaders on chronic absenteeism. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor joins us from City Hall. Rebecca.
Yeah, Guy, in 2022, 58% of Baltimore City students were marked chronically absent. That's compared to just 25% statewide. And now city leaders want to know why.
Yes, it's concerning.
Poor attendance. It's the latest problem plaguing Baltimore City schools. With an unprecedented 45,000 city school students repeatedly reported missing last year.
Is 58% chronic absenteeism one of the highest you've seen?
It is among the highest.
To be marked chronically absent in Maryland, a student must have missed more than 10% of the school year. Last month, a Project Baltimore investigation digging into state data revealing from 2016 to 2022, the number of chronically absent Baltimore City students more than doubling to more than half of those enrolled.
If we don't address this crisis now, the dropout crisis that we're going to face in a few more years is going to be huge.
In an attempt to do just that, city leaders now summoning school administrators to City Hall.
When we see high absenteeism,
Council President Nick Mosby demanding a hearing to learn the causes and effects of chronic absenteeism on youth. Meanwhile, Education, Workforce, and Youth Committee Chairman Robert Stokes,
If they're not in school, where are they?
also asking what impact the record number of empty desks could be having on the skyrocketing number of young people committing and falling victim to crime this year.
We're not saying it's tied to that, but maybe after we find out what that data is, maybe it can be tied.
causation or correlation, not really sure, but that's the point of the hearing, to really try to understand and know, one, where we are with the numbers, two, where have we come from, and three, what are the things that we can do to ensure that we are getting to our young children before they get to some of these unproductive acts.
Now, Mosby's calls for a hearing with school leaders was unanimously approved by the city council. However, we're still waiting to learn when exactly that hearing will be held. Reporting live outside of City Hall, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Rebecca. This isn't the first time the council members have questioned school leaders. 3 weeks ago, a council committee held a hearing on Project Baltimore's report showing 23 schools where 0 students among those tested were proficient in math. Council members didn't ask many questions about the math scores dropped so low, focusing on things like summer programming and violence instead. We saw a similar situation in 2021 when the council held a similar hearing on ghost students in Baltimore City schools and grade changing at Augusta Fells High. During that hearing, council members never mentioned the school by name. You can find more on those past hearings and the uptick in juvenile violence on our website, foxbaltimore.com. The special prosecutor probing the FBI's investigation into alleged ties between Russia and Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, issuing his final report Monday with sharp criticism of the Bureau, but no new charges. Chief political correspondent Scott Thuman has more from Capitol Hill.
It took 4 years, but the special prosecutor overseeing that probe into possible ties between Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and Russia is over, and concluded that the FBI never should have launched a full Trump-Russia probe. Special counsel John Durham in a roughly 300-page report noting a series of missteps by the FBI and the Justice Department, saying that investigators relied on what was known as the Steele dossier and what Durham described as raw, unanalyzed, and uncorroborated intelligence, and that investigators had confirmation bias. In other words, Durham is declaring that investigators repeatedly ignored or rationalized away evidence that didn't support the Trump-Russia conspiracy, and that some agents who were Trump critics uncharacteristically sped up the investigation, calling it a, quote, noticeable departure from how it approached prior matters involving Hillary Clinton. Former President Trump reacting Monday afternoon, posting on Truth Social, the American public was scammed just as it is being scammed right now by those who don't want to see greatness for America. However, many people do say the FBI absolutely had ample reasons to at least investigate Trump. Meanwhile, reaction now from the FBI saying over the last few years, they've put a lot of corrective action in place in 2016. Much of what took place with this Russia probe could have been prevented. Lastly, and important to remember here, there were convictions of a half-dozen Trump associates, and that Russia did intervene on the campaign's behalf, and that Trump's team may have even welcomed it, but it was found that they did not conspire with Russia. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
While Democrats haven't said much about the report, many Republican lawmakers did respond on Twitter. Let's take a look at some of them and what they're saying tonight. Here from South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham saying, sadly, this report shines a bright light on problems at the FBI and DOJ. Here from Mike Lee, a senator, the politicization of the FBI represents a clear and present danger to our democratic principles, and it is imperative that we address this issue with the urgency it demands. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, driven by their hatred-fueled derangement for one man, Comey and Morell, and others, damaged the reputation and trust in our intelligence agencies far more than any foreign power ever has or possibly could. Well, Maryland sole Republican Congressman, Andy Harris, also responded to that probe, saying, quote, it's pretty clear after reading the Durham report that the Russian collusion investigation used nearly $40 million in taxpayer money to legitimize an opposition research project that had no place in our justice system. The statement goes on to say this is an example of why Republicans fought to create a committee to investigate the weaponization of the FBI and DOJ. Harris says Durham has been invited to testify on the probe. We want to know what you think. Do you believe the FBI is being used as a political tool? That poll just opened. So far, 88% of voters say yes. You can head to foxbaltimore.com and click on the Pulse tab to weigh in.
And it looks like some weather going downhill as we work over the next 24 hours. Notice the next weather maker station down to our south. Overnight tonight should be mainly clear and not as cool as last night, dropping down to near 60. But notice the clouds increasing into tomorrow. That means some rain on the way for tomorrow afternoon for some. I'll get into that, plus your Preakness forecast hour by hour in a couple of minutes.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. Sharp criticism for Harford County Executive Bob Casserly and his proposed budget. It's coming from his own party. Why the sheriff accuses him of defunding the police. Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski decides not to run for the U.S. Senate. Instead, he's backing another county executive. What his political future could hold. And still ahead after the break, a former high-ranking employee is suing Baltimore County Public Schools. The Project Baltimore report and the accusations and how it could impact the decision for the next superintendent. A former high-ranking employee of Baltimore County Public Schools is suing the system for wrongful termination. Project Baltimore's Chris Phapps explains this lawsuit is bigger than one employee losing their job. It could impact the next superintendent.
This wrongful termination lawsuit was filed against Baltimore County Public Schools on April 13th. It was filed by the district's former Chief Human Resources Officer, Sharia Anderson. Anderson claims BCPS engaged in unlawful acts when her employment was terminated in December 2022. According to court documents, she lost her job after a series of disagreements with district leadership. Anderson is seeking a jury trial along with compensatory and punitive damages and other relief. This lawsuit is noteworthy for a couple reasons. First, the people mentioned are some of the highest ranking officials in BCPS, including Superintendent Dr. Darrell Williams and his deputy superintendent, Dr. Miriam Yarbrough. The other reason this lawsuit is noteworthy is because Dr. Williams is leaving on June 30th. His contract was not renewed.
So our approach has been a multi-layered one.
And Yarbrough, who was once a principal in Montgomery County, is one of the 4 finalists to replace him. And now she's been mentioned in this wrongful termination lawsuit.
For me, it would be a problem because it would cause me to have doubts.
Lily Rowe is a former member of the Baltimore County Board of School Commissioners.
I don't think I would want to just jump into a choice without knowing details.
According to the lawsuit, Anderson reported to Dr. Williams and Dr. Yarbrough. Anderson claims in or around 2022, she discussed disciplinary action for an employee with both Williams and Yarbrough on several occasions. Anderson says she was later berated by Dr. Williams for placing that employee on leave without first consulting him. The lawsuit does not specifically state what role, if any, Yarbrough had in Anderson's alleged wrongful termination. Baltimore County Schools is the 24th largest school system in America. It has 111,000 students with a $2.2 billion budget. The school board is rumored to vote on a new superintendent, possibly this week. Rowe believes with the filing of this lawsuit, the board should wait.
Well, what happens if you end up with a superintendent who was considered to be somehow at fault for a wrongful termination? If you have somebody that actually really did wrongfully terminate someone, how's that going to affect the morale of the staff? And are we going to lose a whole bunch of staff?
Project Baltimore reached out to Baltimore County Schools and Dr. Yarbrough asking for a comment concerning the allegations in the lawsuit. We also asked about the suit's potential impact on a new superintendent. We received this reply. BCPS declines to comment at this time on this pending litigation. Anderson's attorney also declined to comment to Project Baltimore.
It's really hard to remove a superintendent. So I would think you would want to deliberate and make sure that you're sure before you hire one.
Dr. Yarbrough is one of 4 finalists to be the next Baltimore County Schools superintendent. The school board has chosen to keep the names confidential during the interview process, but Project Baltimore has confirmed the other 3 names are Dr. Robert Taylor, Dr. Kenny Rodriguez, and Dr. Jason Glass. Yarbrough is the only local candidate. We will continue to follow the board's progress on choosing a new superintendent. I'm Chris Phapps, and this is Project Baltimore.
Coming up at 10:30, Governor Wes Moore is expected to sign a bill some call an assault on the Second Amendment. What comes next for Senate Bill 1? A Marine is charged in a chokehold death on a New York City subway. How summer lining up to support him after the break.
And taking a look ahead to a busy weekend coming up. Preakness weekend starts on Friday with Black-Eyed Susan Day. In fact, there are events all week, but Black-Eyed Susan Day is on Friday. Looks like a dry day there on our computer model. But look at that on Saturday. That rain risk, especially in the morning, could clear In the afternoon, at least on our GFS future scan computer model, the European says maybe some rain all day long. So we're going to put in at least a few showers for Infield Fest and post time at 6:50 p.m. for the big race. Temperatures in the 70s. I'm going to let you know how that shapes up through the rest of the weekend in a couple of minutes.
Taking a look at the Fox box right now in the top left, parents in Missouri are asking the state to reopen an investigation into a teacher they say abused students with special needs. The parents want the school system to use an investigator who is trained to question nonverbal students. The district tells Sinclair Broadcast Group the safety of its students is its top priority. On the top right, Donald Trump's former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, denies allegations of sexual assault and wage theft. One of Giuliani's former associates is suing for $10 million, claiming he made his sexual demands a requirement of her job. On the bottom left, the governor of Tennessee has signed off on additional protections to shield the gun industry from lawsuits. Democrats have slammed the legislation. Republicans argue it helps businesses in the state's growing firearms industry. On the bottom right, President Joe Biden nominated a cancer specialist to become the next director of the National Institutes of Health. She's currently the head of the NIH's Cancer Institute. If confirmed, she'll be the second woman named as the permanent director of the agency. In New York City, a trial is turning into a political battle. GOP presidential hopefuls are throwing their support behind the Marine veteran charged with second-degree manslaughter for placing a man in a chokehold on a New York City subway. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the story.
A wave of conservative support for 24-year-old ex-Marine Daniel Penny.
This Marine was trying to save those individuals on that subway.
GOP presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy donating $10,000 to Penny's legal defense fund, tweeting, quote, "We must restore the rule of law in America." Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg bypassing a grand jury, charging Penny with second-degree manslaughter for placing 30-year-old homeless man Jordan Neely in a fatal chokehold in a New York City subway.
Certainly, a reasonable jury would not believe that Daniel Penny intended to kill Jordan Neely. But a jury could believe beyond a reasonable doubt that the actions were not justified and that they were reckless.
Protests erupting around the city. Nearly reportedly on a top 50 list New York City officials keep of homeless people who caused trouble. He was arrested in February for assaulting a 67-year-old, breaking several bones in her face. Eyewitnesses say Neely was yelling and behaving erratically. Penny's lawyers claim he was acting in self-defense, protecting himself and other passengers. The fact Penny was not initially arrested or charged, sparking outcry from some on the left. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calling the delay in arrest disgusting.
Alvin Bragg and Eric Adams almost certainly collaborated on this decision. It's a political decision, not a criminal justice decision, which is not the way our system is supposed to work, and that's the shame of it.
As of Monday, about 40,000 individuals donated more than $2 million for Penny's defense. Support increasing exponentially following a tweet by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis that read in part, quote, "We stand with good Samaritans like Daniel Penny. Let's show this Marine America's got his back." If convicted, Penny could face up to 15 years behind bars. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
A war of words over Harford County's budget. Why the sheriff is accusing the county executive of defunding the police. Title 42 has expired. Been that way for a couple of days now, but now we're getting a look at the impact of it, the trend we're seeing now that caught many by surprise. We're following three big stories at 10:30 tonight. Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski will not run for the U.S. Senate seat. Instead, he's backing Angela Alsobrooks, the Prince George's County Executive. Why one political analyst says that will be good for Olszewski's political future. The budget battle in Harford County is getting heated. Why the sheriff there is accusing the county executive of defunding the police. And Governor Wes Moore is set to sign Senate Bill 1 into law tomorrow afternoon. That bill seeks to limit where legal concealed carry weapon permit holders can bring their weapons in public. Lawmakers focused much of the session on the plan, but as Mackenzie Frost reports, there are some serious concerns about the constitutionality of that plan moving forward.
bill.
From the start of session, lawmakers clear about their goals when it comes to Senate Bill 1.
So we're going to push to the constitutional limit to ensure that Marylanders are safe.
Senator Will Smith, chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, talking about the new concealed carry landscape in America following the Bruin U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Some Democrats argue limiting where legal wear and carry permit holders can bring their guns in public will create a safer community.
Do we want to live in one where we think that violence is solved by more guns, or do we want to live in a society where we believe that people should have the opportunity to maximize their potential and not need a gun to feel safe?
Opponents see it as an assault on the Second Amendment.
It's an illegal bill.
The constitutional question remaining a concern through all of session. After some negotiations, legislators settling, sending the plan to Governor Westmore's desk. More.
I think people who claim that there's a constitutional challenge, they can claim it. But you know who doesn't think there's a constitutional challenge? Our state's lawyer, the Attorney General.
Clear on his plan.
I will sign it, yes.
Despite this last-ditch effort from the House GOP sending more a veto request Friday, the plan moving forward. But it's not just Republicans who refuse to get on board.
We're doing things kind of backwards.
Baltimore City Democratic Senator Corey McCray voting no on the plan.
And I do think that it has constitutional issues.
That concern could mean litigation for the state moving forward. Baltimore area attorney Jeremy Eldridge argues the broad language carving out where legal gun owners can bring their weapons could cause confusion.
Am I going to get some completely innocent client that has a permit to carry, that isn't sure where they can possess, and they walk in the wrong place on the wrong day unintentionally, and they end up being prosecuted in court? That's the big concern here.
While lawmakers crafting policy limiting where weapons are in public, legislation targeting juvenile crime or repeat violent offenders not addressed, while communities in places like Baltimore continue to be gripped by a crime crisis. Over the weekend, a 14-year-old girl shot and another juvenile arrested. Baltimore police telling City Council last week 53 young people have been arrested and charged as adults so far this year. Governor Moore recognizing the issue facing Maryland.
We've got to be able to focus on getting these guns off of our streets, these illegal guns off our streets.
How to do that, or where to begin, seems to be where the divide remains. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Back in April, we asked City State's Attorney Ivan Bates about the bill. Bates says the bill could create problems when it's first implemented due to a lack of education, warning that people who are trying their best to follow the law could still end up accidentally breaking the law.
So I think there will be some confusion with the law. I think we have to make sure that if we decide not to prosecute, individuals who purchase their weapons legally, that there's an educational component. So you'll see a lot of what I think is common sense, making sure that we don't harm legal gun owners, but to make sure that they understand that they also have to follow the laws and the rules.
The Baltimore City Sheriff also weighed in on the issue, saying while the bigger threat to the public is the use of illegal firearms, his office will be committed to making sure legal gun owners are following the law on where they can carry their weapons. There's a budget battle brewing in Harford County. Sheriff Jeffrey Gaylor is accusing Bob Castley, the county executive, of defunding the police. Fox 45's Amy Simpson spoke with the sheriff today in Bel Air about his concerns.
It's a dynamic that's unusual along party lines. A Republican sheriff at odds with a Republican county executive. But that's the reality right now in Harford County. For Sheriff Jeff Gaylor.
In 9 years of doing this as sheriff,
the budget process and advocating for his agency is no new task. But this year, he says, has been different.
It's an unacceptable budget. A nice way to describe it would be a train wreck right now.
In the 2024 budget proposal, Gaylor says County Executive Bob Castley removed funding for 2 victim service advocates, a $350,000 line item in the sheriff's office budget.
That's taking money that existed and zeroing it. That is defunding the police, period.
But the sheriff says Castley also put the brakes on plans for a new Central Precinct Training Academy. A $22 million capital project Gaylor says was already approved 2 years ago by the previous administration.
And now the county executive is not moving forward and has changed his stories countless times on what he's doing, why it's on hold, why he's not moving forward. Every time he opens his mouth, there's a different description of why he's not moving forward.
On Fox 45 Morning News today, the county executive defended his budget proposal.
Everybody's got to live within their means, and I've introduced a fiscally conservative budget that doesn't raise taxes.
And in a statement this afternoon, the county executive's office responding to the sheriff's budget concerns, saying, as a state senator, He was the lead voice in Annapolis backing the blue, pointing to his proposal, which would add 10 new deputies and a salary increase next year. The sheriff, after receiving a historic $12 million increase last year, is now asking for an unrealistic increase of $28 million. Casserly said in part, the sheriff's spending request would require a tax increase, which I will not do. We must live within our means.
He's standing in front of Harford County citizens and saying, I'm going to have to raise taxes. It's a lie.
Today, Fox 45 asked the sheriff if his relationship with the county executive can be repaired after this budget battle is over.
You can't redeem yourself from being dishonest. It might work in Annapolis, but bringing Annapolis here to the county executive's office is like bringing Baltimore crime problems to Harford County. It doesn't work here.
And the Harford County Council must approve a final budget by June 15th. That's exactly 1 month from today. In Bel Air, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, the sheriff isn't the only one upset over the county executive's budget. Parents, teachers, and Harford County school leaders are as well. Bob Casserly submitted a $19 million cut to schools to avoid a $500 tax hike, according to him. Critics say the cuts will cripple classrooms and drive away teachers. You can find more on the ongoing budget battle in Harford County on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott is announcing upgrades to the James D. Gross Rec Center in the city's Park Heights neighborhood. The updates will include making the building ADA compliant to make sure everyone can enjoy the center.
So we're going to have an ADA ramp, ADA toilet room, new entry ramp, vestibule, flooring, ceiling, windows, restroom, storefront doors, upgrading the arts and craft and the other game rooms in this facility. And by the way, those facilities look exactly the same today as they did when I was a young man attending this rec center after school. So it's far, far, far overdue.
Well, the renovations are part of the mayor's rec rollout program. The city will update several rec centers throughout the city over the next few weeks. Well, tomorrow, Baltimore City Police will release body camera video of last week's police shooting of a 17-year-old. Baltimore police identified Cedric Ellaby as the officer who shot that teen. Officers say the teen ran and pulled out a gun. Ellaby fired after the teen refused to drop that weapon, according to police. Detective Ellaby has been placed on administrative leave. Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski will not run for U.S. Senate. He made that announcement today, saying he was throwing his support behind Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks. Olszewski was considering the idea of running himself, but calls backing Alsobrooks a no-brainer.
Washington needs more local executives in its ranks. People who know how to get things done. People who not only manage multi-billion-dollar budgets, but who have transformed those budgets into new schools, new parks, new infrastructure. Angela is that kind of leader.
On Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, we spoke with political analyst John Deedy about Olszewski's decision. He says he believes it was a smart move on the county executive's part.
Having her endorsement in many ways helps Johnny Olszewski more. If Dutch Ruppersberger decides to step down, Johnny would probably choose to run for the House seat. That would help him with a lot of communities in the Baltimore County region. So I see this as really a win-win for both of them. And I think that his resource base and his base of supporters could really vote for both candidates in a primary and a general.